response to prayer. Okay. So what you need to do right now is to be confident in the fact that He loves you, and that as you walk, you on this path that's going to be and be free. Can you right now get your peace? Can you get that? I'm free. In the name of Jesus, I'm free. Don't worry about if you love it or not. I know you do. But it's not about, we limit it when we govern his actions by our love. You govern them by how much he loves you. If he loves you enough to die for you, he loves you unconditionally to deliver you healthy and make you healthy. And God's going to work on this thing for you because he's not going to forsake you. We got all night right here. Father God, right now, in the name of Jesus, God, we thank you that all fear, all anxiety, and all stress is released from her right now, in the name of Jesus. Hallelujah.
Oh, Jesus' name. Deliverance. Oh, deliverance. Speak deliverance. Ignite Jesus.
Hallelujah. Lord, right now we just let the Holy Ghost anoint us. Flow into her right now. Holy Spirit, flow into her right now. Flow into her. Don't govern what God's going to do to you, but how you feel, what you've done or not done. I want you to think about how much he loves you. How much he loves you. How much his love. His love has no fear. His love has no anguish. His love has no care that will cause us to be anxious. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. He sees you as he sees you. See yourself that way. Lord, you love me. I know you do. And you're going to walk me through whatever I'm going through. The total victory right now. Just receive it. Receive it from him. 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 Hallelujah. Receive it from him. In Jesus' name. Hallelujah. Receive it from him. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. 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 Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah.
And we speak to that tormented spirit.
Yes.
Command you to go to your kids. Never come back on your kids.
I'm not standing here, but does it just keep this preaching anyway? We need to quit looking at what God can do for us based on what we are. What we are.
That's right.
We have no merit to bring to God. We have no righteousness to bring to God. We have no goodness to bring to God. We need to look to Him for what He loves us. And then that makes us become what He wants us to be. Don't put your faith in your ability. Put it in God's ability. Put it in His love for you, not your love for Him. Your love at best is imperfect. But God's love is perfect toward us. And the Bible says perfect love casts out fear. So let His love just cast out all the fear and torment that's in your body, mind, soul, and spirit, and allow the Holy Spirit just to show you what love it really is. And then, no matter how far you've gone out, no matter what you've done, there's the cross and the blood and the power and the love of God. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise God. This is what God wants to do in all of us. Amen. He wants to set us free so we can be free to live.
Hallelujah.
morning, Sister Marcia almost crawled. I mean, God, thank you.
God is a healer. Yes,
He's a healer. Oh, hallelujah.
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 Hallelujah. Praise God. Come on, y'all. Let's get this over here. The song says Amazing Grace, but at the end of it, the way we sing, we say, praise God, 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 yes. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but praise God, now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. And because of that, I'll praise God, praise God, praise God, I'll praise God, praise God, praise God, praise God. Oh, I'll praise God, I'll praise God, I'll praise my God, I'll praise God, I'll praise God, praise God, praise God. Yes.
Church is fun to thank for Jesus. Tasted of the Lord tonight. The Bible said, taste and know the Lord good. Well, I guess we're ready to turn Brother Joe loose. Hallelujah. Glory to God. Appreciate that, Sister Harry. Such a man that can play anything.
Yes.
Woo! Glory, 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 glory.
Thank you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Jesus.
You
know what? Really good.
Over to the, you can't see it.
Be associated and affiliated with the church.
You can play later.
God's been giving a message.
Just exit. Just close.
He's been dealing with me on a message. and to see that the people are just right here already know how to receive the message. It's not hard to teach people that are learned and want to learn. And it's a blessing to be here. Everything that just happened right now just covered my message. I mean, if we had to right now, we could go home and couldn't get no more than what I can minister to you. But I just want to show you how God works. That tonight, everything that happened was for a reason. And for the last 3 to 4 weeks, God's been dealing with me on this message. And due to the constraints of time, all I could do is, I'm going to be cutting it kind of short.
No, don't, brother, don't do that. We got plenty of time.
Well, this is just so much. It's good. Anyhow, this isn't the message, but this is an opener that God's given me to say. And I've got it all wrote down. And I'm going to be doing a lot of scripture reading tonight, but I heard a pastor say, in fact, I heard a pastor say this past week, I'm not going to apologize for the amount of scripture I read. Amen. Because the scriptures are food.
That's right.
And we come in here and we're being fed tonight.
That's right. Thank you, Lord.
This is just something that God told me. Ma'am, I don't know your name back there in the room. Sure, when you come up off that floor, that smile's the most beautiful smile I've ever seen in my life. You radiate it. It's real. Amen. God told me, I'm in tears almost. God told me to tell you and everybody that I come in contact with to minister this. His words are, depart out from bondage. Bondage is the state of being under control of a force or an influence.
Good word. Good, good.
You see, bondage comes in many shapes and forms and effects. Only can come in a physical bondage. Got a brother I'm glad to see right there. Fourth row back. He can tell you what physical bondage is. He's been there. We've got emotional bondage. And there's a spiritual bondage, but you can't really find the definition in the Bible. I looked and searched. But the definition is being stuck in sin. That's a spiritual bondage. And that's the only thing I could find. And I'm just trying to break it down. I always can ask her, try to break things down to the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Because that I might know, you might not know. She told me to teach my story just like you'd never heard the story.
Amen. Amen. Right.
Physical bondage is when you're limited in your natural body. Could be done by chains or shackles. Emotional. Emotional. A lot of times emotional. There's so many people they might not be in their physical bondage, but they're in an emotional bondage. And that's just as constraining as the physical, because when your emotions, I balled up in the floor before, I balled up in my bedroom before, emotional, bound, being tormented, and I couldn't even do nothing physical. Emotional is our very thoughts. Your very thoughts can be obstacles that block us from achieving the happiness and causing you to be in bondage. We'll get over to the spiritual bondage, and I found it in Romans 6:16. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are, to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. I tried it both ways, and we're all human, and every last one of us I know has tried it both ways. We've tried serving this one and serving that one. I've tasted of this one, and I've tasted of that one, but I can tell you that tasting of God There's no better taste. There's no better taste. And this isn't my message yet. I've been sensing in my spirit a change. I've been hearing pastors and preachers. I do a lot of internet listening, driving on the road. Sister Dorothy, I have to elbow her because she's constantly getting where I'm trying to minister at and can't get it out because she's up for me. But I've been seeing a spiritual change, sensing a spiritual change. What God's told me, it's a new season. It's a fresh season. You know, seasons come and go. We got winter, we got spring, we got summer, we got fall. Out with the old, in with the new. It's a new and a fresh season. God's been telling me in my spirit, it's fresh right now. It's a change that's coming. Some call it a revival, and that's fine. But I like to call it a restoration, a resuscitation, a renewal, and a rebirth. Now, there's nothing wrong with the old Christian term. God's telling me all this. Y'all just bear with me, and I write it as He gives it to me. There's nothing wrong with the old Christian term revival. That's fine. Before I go any further, everybody say, I love Brother Joe. Now convince me, I love Brother Joe. Okay. However, Christians, it seems that so many Christians and churches have a spiritual DNR order. That's a do not resuscitate order. And it's all because complacency has allowed the people to settle for just enough.
That's right.
Guys, church, I know we serve a God of more than enough.
Yes, right. Yes, we do.
Oh.
Yes, yes, we do. My God.
If I could just tell you how blessed her and I have been just in the last few months of coming back into obedience and lining up with God's word. I praise and I thank God for this body. Y'all remember when I came in and asked if I could fellowship here, and I was welcomed in, and that's what we as Christians need to do. Y'all allowed me to come out of my bondage, my emotional bondage. See, I tasted of the goodness of God, and then just went a different direction. Complacency has allowed the people to settle for just enough, but the God we serve is more than enough. God told me this is, listen now, this is serious. People say, this calling out that we're experiencing in this church, I've got a newfound friend down in Hartsville Church, a pastor down there, and he's experiencing it in his congregation. And I'm hearing it on the internet radio where other pastors and churches are experiencing in their congregation. It's not nothing new. It's something fresh. This calling out requires us, the body, the church, His children. Don't stumble on this, but it's a calling out, calling us to be holy as He is holy.
Amen.
And there's nothing wrong with striving to be holy as He is holy. Now, I got people in the world, and you got people or friends in the world that they want to say it's impossible. I'm here to tell you it's not impossible to strive to be holy. It's not impossible to strive to do anything. That's why the revival word, it's just an old word, and there's just no power surrounding it anymore. He calls us out to be holy as He is holy. because it's a fresh season. He told me it's a fresh anointing, and more than anything, deliverance. And this is for a reason and a cause. And God told me the reason and the cause for this pouring out, this resuscitation, is because Jesus is coming back. I'm proclaiming it right now. Jesus is coming back. Jesus might not be coming back. Jesus is coming back. He is coming back. Everyone say, Jesus is coming back. When God began dealing with me about ministering His Word, I felt as if this was the big final push to attract as many into His kingdom. That's just what God just kept ministering to me. It's like, this is a big final push. My question was, God, why are so many bound or in bondage? I have these conversations. I tell Pastor Bill and Pastor Dorothy about them. I have conversations along with God. My question to God was, God, why are there so many bound or in bondage? And the neatest thing about it is, He gave me an answer. I heard. He told me they forgot whose and who they are.
Amen. All right.
And they gave away the property and the talent that I gave you, me, all of us, my church, to the adversary.
Wow. There you go. Say it. That's good.
I'm going to go back to Genesis real quick because
That's a good one. Gave it away.
go back to Genesis because I want to remind you who you are and what we are to be doing. This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 28. Like I said, I'll do a lot of reading, but we're going to do a lot of eating tonight. Check the clock. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female created He them. Here's what we're to be doing. God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And when I come to a word that I don't know the exact thing on, I go look it up. The Bible says to subdue it. I said, okay, Lord, I want to be obedient to you, so I want to know what I need to do to subdue the earth. He told us to subdue means overcome or bring under control. Then He gave each and every one of us dominion. What does dominion mean? I wanted to know. And it says rulership. You know? He said, let us make man in our own image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over fish and sea. God is God.
Yes, He is.
He is over all. And He created us in the image of Him. And He made us rulers over His earth. We're rulers. We might not own it, but we're rulers over his earth. That's where we come into being in his image. We're supposed to be God-like.
Yes.
We're made in his image. We're to act like he does.
Ooh, yeah.
God also gave us free will. And he honors choices. But he did tell me this, know this, choices have, and we all know this, choices have consequences and effects with an E. So God said, let's make godly choices and affect with an A the world that he gave us. You know what I've been hearing a lot of, and I've been hearing it ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, that we're living in the devil's world. Well, that's exactly why we're in the condition that we are. Because this world wasn't made for the devil. He made it for us so that we could be his children and be God-like and be in his image. And so that we could subdue this thing and that we could prosper this thing and that we could multiply this thing. Doesn't just mean have offspring, but it is to multiply the goodness of heaven upon earth. It's being multiplied. It should multiply here. I'm proud to say I'm in a church that I know the multiplication factors are happening. I sincerely am.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord.
That's why people are in bondage. You remember where the man of the house went away and he give the talents away, and when he came back, one multiplied it, made 5 from 10, and what was it, 2 to 4, and then the other one went and hid it. We're in bondage because our adversary been coming up to us like what he tried to do, or like he did do with Adam and Eve. But God gave us his word.
Yes, it did.
It's a warning. And I'm going to try to show you some things tonight about the Old Testament to the New Testament. Things that just unravel to me. And I love it. But he warns us, if we do this, you're going to have that effect. If you're going to do that, then you can affect this. And we're in bondage because we've taken and we've given all our authority to Satan.
Amen.
But you know what? It's not over. So we need to take back the very dominion of earth. You know, they say it was the devil's world. No. It's not. It is our earth.
Yes.
It is our earth. It is our earth to be multiplied of godly things, to replenish with godly things. And we might be behind the 8 ball from what people would say by looking at the situation. But I want to tell you a little something, that God can take a situation that is dire, that is a need or death, and resurrect it, change it. And a lot of people get mixed up and say, you did a 360, but God can do a 180 out of it. Because if you're going this way and you do a 360, you're just going to keep going the same way. You can make a 180 out of all this. Now, that's... I kept this here forever last time.
Good word. Give me some good word.
Now, the message. There's a lot of scripture reading in this. Before I go into it, I just want to pray. Precious Heavenly Father, God, I am so thankful that you've let me stand here in your presence, Lord, before these people. Father, I ask that you would just minister through me this word as needed. Lord, you know the hearts of each and every person here. Let the seed that I speak be planted, Lord, and let that ground be fertile so that it can bring forth fruit, much fruit, and good fruit, Father. In your name, I pray. Amen. I changed the title of this message. Like I said, I've been listening and working on this one. I changed it, but this morning, God said, go back to the original. And this one is called The Genesis of Our Exodus. I want to explain that. Genesis is an origin, or a creation, or a beginning. Exodus is a mass departure, especially for immigrants. And then immigrants is a person who leaves their own country in order to settle permanently in another. I've got a story to tell you tonight. This story don't begin with once upon a time. But the story is going to end with, and they lived happily ever after. I'm going to do Exodus chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 1 and probably read down through verse 12. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to a mountain of God, even Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. He looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see the great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that, he turned aside to see. God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Draw not near hither. Put off thy shoes from thy feet, for the place wherewith thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the afflictions of my people which are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them out of the land unto a good land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, and unto a place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. And I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, God, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee, when thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt. Ye shall serve God upon this mountain. First thing that stood out to me, around the bush, he was saying, Moses, Moses. He said, Here I am. Then further down, he commissioned Moses, and Moses was saying, Who am I? Moses knew who he was, himself who he was. Then the commission came, and God called him, and then he didn't think he was enough. I've been there time and time again. Not thinking I was enough. Feeling that God had called me, but it's like, God, why me? Why me? I feel blessed just to be in this service that we had this evening before I ever stepped up here. And I feel blessed that I get to talk about what just happened here. Birds were broke. People coming out. But I want to just kind of go through this story quick. Moses says, God, how will they believe me? He's been commissioned to go. And the Lord said unto him, what is in your hand, Moses? And he said, it's a rod. God said, well, cast it down on the ground. And he did. And when he cast it down on the ground, it became a serpent. And Moses is just like me, because the Bible says that when it became a serpent, Moses fled from it. It's like, feet don't fail me now. And then the Lord said unto Moses, put forth thine hand and take it up by the tail. Well, I'm done. I ain't doing it. That's what I would have said. And he put forth his hand and caught it up, and it became a rod in his hand. Now, a lot of y'all can tell this story even better than me. But we're going to go back to the beginning and just kind of go through it real quick. He kept trying to get out of it, told God, even in Exodus 4 and 10. And Moses said unto the Lord, my Lord, I am not an eloquent, neither therefore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow to speech, and I have a slow tongue. Kept looking for a reason to get out of it. Amen. Didn't see. He seen the work, the vastness of what it was going to be. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us, is we see this big thing. But God says, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to direct you. Moses is still, God, I seen you turn my rod into a snake, but I can't speak. Send someone else. Then it comes to, God lets him use Aaron as his mouth, as the speaker. Back in the day, this is years after Joseph had already passed away. Back in Exodus 1, we just scanned through it. But the Israelite people, you know, they were in bondage. But they just kept prospering and growing and growing. And Pharaoh became afraid of the people. The bigger they grew, the harder he tried to make them work, tried to keep them down, tried to keep them oppressed. And at one point he called unto the midwives there and told him to charge all the people, say, kill every male child that is born and keep the women daughter, or the girl babies. So his mother, Lord help Jesus. His mother kept him as long as she possibly could. And when she could keep him no longer, she took it, she made a basket out of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein and laid it in the flags in the river brink. When that was the beginning. When God finally convinced Moses to go back after all had worked out, God tells Moses that the men that sought him are dead, to take thy rod and to go show the signs. He said, when thou goest, tell Pharaoh, let my people go. But in advance, God was straight up with Moses. He told him from the beginning, you're going to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh's going to tell you no. Pharaoh's not going to let your people go. And he kept telling me. Exodus 4:23. It's going to get a little bit better here in a minute. And Moses said, I say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. Well, we know that through all the plagues, there was 10 different plagues. And we know it was that last plague that made Pharaoh let him go. Pharaoh hardened his heart at all the plagues and lied to him. Every plague that would come along, he'd say, you pray to your God or ask your God to take it away and I'll let your children go. And every time when Moses would go, so be it, I'll go through it when you want it. And Pharaoh would tell him and it would go away. The plague would go away. But the last one, Pharaoh finally let them go because his firstborn son was killed. You know, the Bible says that, or the text that we was reading, that God heard the cries of his people, the oppression that the Egyptians oppressed them with. Because through all this, they were just making them work and work and work to build cities for the Pharaoh. And he wasn't treating them right. It's like a lot of us don't get treated right when we're trying to do the godly thing. So after Pharaoh let them go, Exodus 14, but the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them camping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore thou hast dealt us to carry forth out of Egypt? The children are standing there at the Red Sea now. Their backs to the sea. Pharaoh's all wroth and mad. They've already seen the miracles that God could do. They've already seen the plagues that had happened. They were already omitted from not losing their firstborn by following the law of God. And then they're at the Red Sea with their backs toward it. And the first thing they do, it's like they start murmuring. Murmuring is to say something in a low, soft voice, continuous, a low sound. Abby knows what murmuring is with me, because she'll say something that don't set right, and I just, I'll do my murmuring. But these people begin murmuring. But God said, Exodus 14, 13, and 16, Moses said to the people, fear not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He will show you today. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace.
Yes.
And the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward.
Yes.
But lift up thy rod, and stretch out thy hand over the sea, and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go forth on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Now that's all it would have took for me for the rest of my life.
Right?
It wouldn't have took no more than that. But after they go through the Red Sea, when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, No, let me go back. Exodus 4. Let me go to the 19th verse real quick. And then the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. So what happened is, they was following the pillar of the cloud. Okay, I'm sorry, I skipped the verse. And verse 21 on 13. And the Lord went before them the day of the pillar of a cloud and led them the way, and the night of the pillar of fire to give them light and to go by day. To go by day and night, yeah. So, God's in front of them right now. They're coming to be attacked from behind. So God takes and he moves back. The angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went back behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud of darkness to them. But it gave light by night to these, so that one came not near the other all night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back, a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went in the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left. But when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, they had God watching their back. They had solid and dry ground to walk on. They had walls of water on their left and right, which kept them from veering off that path. And they had the promised land right before them. They made it through that. And the soldiers and the Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the sea, and all of Pharaoh's horses and his chariots and horsemen. And it came to pass that the morning watch, the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off the chariot wheels. They started to pursue the Israelites, and God just started knocking the wheels off of them, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand and over the sea, that the waters may come upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength. When the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the seas after them. There remained not so much as one of them. That's what I was saying, is that would be all it would take for me to trust God. And then we find a little bit further, just 3 days into the wilderness after crossing the Red Sea on the dry ground, that they were murmuring again. And it sounds like a lot of the world today. Something miraculous happens one day, and tomorrow, if it's not happening the same way it did, we start murmuring and groaning and complaining again.
Amen.
What they were moaning and complaining about this time is 3 days into the wilderness. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness ashore, and they went 3 days into the wilderness, and they found no water. First, they just went through too much water. And now they're complaining about not enough water. And witnessing walking through on dry ground with walls of water, and then watching the water come back through. It's water. So they're murmuring again. And when they came to Marah, this is why they're murmuring, verse 23, and when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. The people all murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and ordinances, and there he proved them. Then they were happy again. Now, so I'm going to get through this pretty quick. A few months later, sad murmuring people again. This is Exodus 16, 2 through 4. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died in the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat at flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. These people were actually wanting to go back into bondage because of their belly's sake. They were just in a wilderness. They knew they were going to the promised land. Moses had already told them what they were going to do. They knew where they were going. But like a lot of us, they would become disobedient. And the course would get altered. The path would get altered. They would suffer things out of disobedience. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God that we died at the hand of the Lord of the land of Egypt when we sat at flesh pots. Then the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, I'm going to rain bread down on these people now. Happy again they was. Kind of reminds me of me. Up, down, or used to be. Up, down. They were provided for miraculously. Bread on the ground, meat flies in from the air, water gushes out of rocks. And get this, it was for over 1 million people. It wasn't just for 15, 20 people. God was able to supply it for 1 million people. They were told how to gather the manna. They were told how to gather the manna, but many were disobedient and couldn't even go out and just get what was provided for daily like they were told to get. I'm going to skip on to chapter 17. Who do you think's murmuring now? Chapter 17, verse 1. And the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness to Sin after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses, and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, Why chide with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water. And the people murmured once again against Moses and said, Wherefore is it that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and the cattle that thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They almost be ready to stone me. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, and before the people, and take thee the elders of Israel, and thy rod, for thou hast smotest the river, take in thine hand and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb. And thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Masha and Meribah, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because he tempted the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us not? God had Moses smite the rock, and water came forth. And the people were happy again. And then, a little bit further down, there was a battle with Amalek. That's in Exodus 17, 8 through 3. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, Choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on top of the hill, and with the rod of God in mine hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. So what it is, Joshua actually ended up winning. Eventually, through many more lessons and troubles and disobedience to the Israelites, I'm going to cut it short here, they finally got to go into their promised land, but it was 40 years later. And I've read that the journey should only took about 2 weeks. And this is because of disobedience.
Amen.
Disobedience. Disobedience kept a whole generation of people from getting to go into the promised land. A full generation had passed before they got to enter. Moses had sent the spies into the land, and the spies come back claiming they couldn't take it. The whole generation died in the wilderness, and the land was taken by their children. I want to show you the whole reason I attempted to even talk about this. Is some things that God showed me. And I'm going to try to tie this up right here. Exodus 3 and 2. I want to say 2 words and give scriptures, and I'm going to be turning back and forth. But just bear with me. Burning bush, bright star. Burning bush, Exodus 3 and 2. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire. And out of the midst of a bush he looked. And behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Bright star, Matthew 2:2. Saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. Bulrush basket, Exodus 2 and 3. And manger, Luke 2 and 7. Exodus 2 and 3. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. Bulrush, for your information, is sometimes used as an aid in water purification. Manger, Luke 2, 7. We'll tie this all up for you guys, I promise. And she brought forth her first son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Pharaoh killed boys, Exodus 1:22. Herod killed boys, Matthew 2:16. Exodus 1 and 22. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. Matthew 2:16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Some of y'all might be catching on where I'm going. Manna, Exodus 16, verse 8. And living bread, John 6:51. Exodus 16:18. Or excuse me, 16:18, yes. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over. He that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. Living bread, John 6:51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. Exodus 4 and 19. And Matthew 2, 20 through 22. After the death of Pharaoh and after the death of Herod. Exodus 4:19. And the Lord said unto Moses in Midian, go return unto Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought thy life. Matthew 2, 20 and 22. Saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea, the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside and went to the parts of Galilee. Exodus 15, and Exodus 15, verse 25. Bitter water. And Matthew 27 through 34, or Matthew 27, verse 34, a bitter drink. Exodus 15, 25. And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and the ordinance, and there he proved them. Now, Matthew 27 through 34. Or Matthew 27, verse 34. They gave him vinegar to drink, mingled with gall, and when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. Pastor Billy. Could I get you to stand under this cross on the right? Could I get you to stand just in front of that cross on the left? Exodus 17. Verses 11 through 13. And then Luke 23, 33. Exodus 17, 11 through 13. Joshua fights Amalek. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on one side, and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Y'all see where I went? Luke 23, 33. And 33. And they were come to a place which is called Calvary. There they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand and one on the left hand. As long as Moses had his hands up in the air, Israel and Joshua was able to defeat the Amalekites. And Moses was tired and had to have his hands held up. We just went through and showed what the Bible is showing us that Jesus did for us on a hill while there was a battle going on for your soul. And I'm standing here being like Jesus, and I've got a malefactor on my left and a malefactor on my right. One's heart's getting softened, and the other one's cursing me because I'm up here, and I ain't getting all three of us down, or just him down. He'd be happy if I just let him down. I've got another one on this side. My hands are up. And physically, they're not holding my hands up. But because I love them, I kept my hands up.
All right.
So that the battle was won with my hands up.
All right.
The battle was won with Moses' hands up.
Yes.
And it's out of love, because Jesus could have come down at any time.
Amen.
Any time. He could have went by. He could have left us. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes.
It's the love of us.
Yes.
You held his hands up and I held his hands up.
Yes.
You held his hands up and I held his hands up.
That's right. Yes. Thank you.
Now, passing through the Red Sea brought the children of the Israelites out of their bondage.
Yes.
They passed through the waters bound. But when they come out the other side, they were free.
All right.
The old title of them was bond. The new title is free.
All right.
However, when the oppressor tried to pass through the water or the blood, it consumed them.
Okay.
As mighty and as powerful as the Egyptians were, with all of their foot soldiers, with all of their chariots, with all of their swords, they could not pass through the blood.
All right. All right. Yes.
2 Corinthians 5:17 says, in Christ we are a new creature.
That's right.
We're free.
Amen. All right. Amen.
That's the word that I stumbled through just to try to get these out, is that everything that we've seen in the New Testament is kind of an image of what we're seeing in the, or excuse me, everything that we see in the Old Testament is kind of the image of what we're seeing in the New Testament. And it's just revelation, and I just want to encourage people. I mean, to me, that was just so deep, and I just want to encourage people to go after it.
Thank you, Lord. Amen.
And I think we had the breakthrough here pretty much already before service. You go ahead and play something.
Yes.
But if there's anybody here, just, I don't care how minor or minute it might seem to you, that needs a breakthrough, that needs something broke, a bond to be broken, a prayer to be answered, I would encourage, once again, just come forward and let the church pray. Because once you decide that you want to come out of bondage and you cross out of that sea, cross through that sea, the enemy can't touch you. He cannot come through the bloodline.